Benny.
I thought you said Betty, not Benny.
Oh, no.
Okay.
You know.
Who's Betty?
My boy, Benny Logan.
I think you
The
lost
Bengals
it.
stay perfect with a 21-point win over the Browns. Andy Dalton connecting with his tight end Tyler Eifert for 3 scores. For Johnny Manziel, really a tale of 2 halves. In the first, Manziel led the Browns on their longest TD drive since 2013, but couldn't lead to any points in the second half.
Looking back, there were a couple times I could have, got it down to a tight end or got it down to a back, and really, even sitting there with 10 minutes left in the fourth quarter, just to get something established. I think it took a little too many shots right there. The back shoulder to Debo, ball over the middle to Barnage. I just gotta get some completions to get into a rhythm, and that really didn't happen for us in the second half.
Stephen A., what'd you think of Johnny's performance last night?
Depends on which Johnny you're talking about. If you're talking about the Johnny Manziel who led them to that scoring drive at the end of the first half, who completed about 11 passes, 11 of his 18 passes in the first half for 100-plus yards, I think that there's no question that Johnny Manziel has shown that he's improving. He's shown that he's putting in some work and that he's getting better. The flip side to it is that in the second half, because he's 11 for 18 for 128 yards in the first half. In the second half, what are we talking about here? 4 or 15 for what is 40? It, 40 yards?
Yep.
No. I mean, Cincinnati did a great job of keeping him in the pocket, neutralizing him, making sure he couldn't get out and scramble and find other receivers to throw it to. And I think that it was exactly what we talked about yesterday. Skip, he threw a couple of passes to Bo, and obviously had the TD pass to Johnson Jr. and all of this other stuff. But in the end, what it comes down to is, as we watch this team, we know that they were inhibited to some degree because they're an inferior team to the Cincinnati Bengals. They're not nearly as complete. And then when you look at their running game, once again, Isaiah Crowell only had 38 yards rushing. Thank you. Only 38 yards rushing. I mean, their running game is virtually absent. So all those things taken into consideration, Johnny didn't have much to work with. He showed flashes of improvement, obviously. I was impressed with what I saw from him in the first half. But once Cincinnati amped it up and really kept him contained and made him into nothing more than a pocket passer, combined with their receivers' inability to get open, he was completely neutralized and nullified and negated in every way. It was over. They were no match for a superior Cincinnati team. So overall, I can't give him more than a C because they got beat up in the second half. But I saw enough in the first half for me to say, I'd like to see how he would be if he had some weapons, meaning some, the Josh Gordons of the world in the lineup, along with an offensive line that could do a better, or even a better running game to some degree. I saw enough to give him a C, but I can't give him more than that after that second half performance.
This topic wears me out. It makes me sad in the end. It's difficult to talk about. I'm with you, but I'm not even as positive as you are about his performance last night. Obviously, if we rank it versus the 30-0 debacle at home against Cincinnati that he started and finished last year, it was improvement. His body language was better, confidence a little better. He seemed like a little more in control of the offense and what he was doing. Didn't look as lost. Give you all that. But I didn't love the way he played overall. I just didn't love it. But I'm with you. It's hard for me to react at all to this because I'm going to say it again. He is playing with the NFL's worst group of running backs and receivers. Nobody has a worse group of skill, quote-unquote, talent than Johnny Manziel is stuck playing with at this point. I'm going to say this again. He is playing for a coach and a GM who did not want him. They did not want to take him with the 22nd overall pick. That came from the owner, Haslam, on draft night in the war room. So he has been, to me, doomed from the start in Cleveland. And he's obviously playing for an organization that seems doomed just as an organization. It's just so dysfunctional. It's such a mess. And after the game, I thought it was fitting that Patton went Jay Gruden on RG3 last year. Remember when Jay Gruden used to rip RG3 or just be so condescending and dismissive of him? And so last night, Patton dismissed Johnny as inconsistent. Okay, I'll give you that. He said he's got to do a better job of throwing from the pocket. Okay, I'll give you that. But then when asked, will Johnny start when they play again in what's 10 days away from now, Patton said, we will assess what pool of players are available. What pool of players? So we're talking about a former first-round draft pick here, and he is relegated to a pool of players. Maybe somebody on the practice squad, maybe one of our second, third, fourth stringers will be ready. Maybe Josh McCown. We'll see what our pool is before we decide whether Johnny's going to get another start. That's as dismissive as you can get from a head coach. So my bottom line again is I don't think Mike Pettin will be there next year. I could be wrong about that, but it seems like he's got one foot out the door because that team is so bad. And I'm hoping Johnny won't be there next year.
Well, both of us are hoping Johnny won't be there. That's number one. Number two, to get back to him, improvisational skills were there. In the pocket, he didn't seem as impressive. The offense clearly looks like it's run with a bit more efficiency with Josh McCown up in there as opposed to Johnny Manziel. But I think that, Skip, I would say this. We spend so much time feeling sorry for Johnny Manziel. Is it time that we should all feel sorry for Mike Pettin? And the reason I bring that up is because, like you said, he didn't want Johnny Manziel. All right? It was forced on him. This man, and then Josh Gordon, you know, with his obviously substance abuse issues. Yep. So that had something to do with it. When you look at it from that perspective, and you've got two primary weapons alone, you know, and then obviously, you know, you've got some issues with injuries in your secondary on the defensive side of the ball. I mean, to me, Mike Pettin, then you got the whole Farmer issue with, you know, getting in trouble with the league and all of this stuff. Everywhere you turn, Mike Pettin has had to work around all of this, along with an owner who won't just cut the check and stay out the way. He actually interferes because he thinks he knows a thing or two about football and what football decisions should be made.
Maybe.
A legitimate argument could be made that Mike Pettin has been undermined to some degree. Not intentionally or anything like that, but the environment is so dysfunctional. Let us remind our audience that Kyle Shanahan was the offensive coordinator on this team. Got let out of his contract. That does not happen with offensive coordinators. He wanted out, got let out, and immediately landed the job in Atlanta. So when you look at it from that perspective, everybody wants to jump ship. And this is what Mike Pettin has to deal with, because by and large, it ain't because of him. It's because of what goes on above him and how it interferes, folks. How it interferes with what folks are doing below.
All right, those are fair points, but I don't have a lot of respect for Mike Pettin as a head coach. I think he was a pretty good defensive coordinator who's in a little over his head as a head coach.
And I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm saying I don't know that because I don't know how much of a chance he's had to be a head coach.
All right.
That's my issue with Mike.
Okay. The bottom line of sadness that I felt for Johnny last night was, do you remember, if we could see this after his touchdown pass, he went over by himself on the sideline and did like an air chest bump to nobody. Nobody.
Oh, I thought he did that. I thought he did that on purpose.
Well, he's just doing it. He's celebrating by himself.
That's right.
Okay. Okay. That's a guy.
But there was a couple of guys that greeted him once he came down.
No, I don't think so.
They were right there.
No,
they were right there.
He did it by himself.
But I'm saying that I thought he.
Funny.
No, but it's just you're saying he's
I think you're reaching there.
Okay. Look, he's doing it by himself because
I didn't realize that when I was
feels like he's an outsider on, you know, playing for a team that didn't really want him. That's Johnny, and plus he's gotten so much grief for all of his money signs, so he's saying, I'm going to go celebrate by myself over here, hopefully out of view of cameras. Obviously there was a camera on him all the way up the sideline. I thought that was telling, because that's Johnny's mentality right now. It's me against the world in Cleveland. I got nobody backing me. Nobody's behind me. Nobody's on my side in Cleveland.
Coach certainly
I'm alone.
Well, I know for a fact he'd like to be gone.
Well, for sure.
He'd like to be gone, like to be in a better situation. There's no question, and I don't blame him one bit. I'd actually like to see him in Houston.
I would too. And the last thing, the one great thing we saw from him, to your point, and I want to push this. This kid has rare quickness and elusivity, because I'm sure the Bengals' whole plan was you cannot ever let him out, and he was getting out at will. Sometimes he got out in the second half.
Oh,
yeah. He didn't make a play.
I couldn't tell. I really couldn't tell. What they had in the second half, one first down maybe?
Yep.
I mean, it was bad.
He missed some throws, but the point is, I still think he can play somewhere else. He needs a fresh start.
I'd love to see him get a shot down the stretch with the Browns. I know it's not the greatest team, just to continue starting, but I don't think that's going to happen as soon as McCown's back.
I personally prefer to see Johnny Manziel on the bench because he has nothing to work with. I don't care how great you are as a quarterback. Even if you're great, if you don't have anybody to throw the ball to because they ain't open, it doesn't make a difference.
Yeah, fair enough. There were a couple that the receivers should have gotten. Moving on, Derrick Rose back in old form. He scored 29 points in Chicago's win over OKC last night. Will he keep it up? We'll discuss that after the break. And we have you covered heading into another sports weekend. Check us out on IG, where I give you the complete rundown of today's show.